Hello Tabitha and Adrian. Today is the 12th of June 2011 and today I'm going to talk to you about Canadian history. So people often think that Canadian history is really boring, which is actually not true at all. Canadian history can be super awesome. It just isn't marred by violence like many other countries' histories. One of the most suspenseful events in Canadian history, however, was the October Crisis of 1970. Before I get into the October Crisis, however, I just need to give you guys a little bit of background. First of all, Quebec relations with the rest of Canada have always been tricky, and this has been since the Battle of the Plains of Abraham in the 1750s, when France essentially officially lost Canada to the British, and even now relations between the French and the English in Canada are strained. This often can be seen during times of conflict in Canada. For example, during the two world wars, when conscription was introduced, a lot of French people didn't want to fight because they were fighting for what they believed to be not their government, i.e. the British government. However, even as recently as 1995, there has been talk about Quebec separation. There was actually a referendum then held, and during that referendum, Quebec only voted to stay in Canada by a very slim margin. The second thing you have to know about is the Front de Libération du Québec, also known as the FLQ. And this was a nationalist, socialist paramilitary group that was active in Quebec during the 1960s and early 1970s. And the Canadian government even branded this group as a terrorist organization. Why? Well, I'll give you two examples. In 1969, they bombed the Montreal Stock Exchange. And they also, in 1969, started a riot on McGill campus. However, that is not what they're most famous for. No, what they're most famous for is the October Crisis, which occurred in October 1970. So what did they do during this time? Well, in early October, they kidnapped French Labour Minister Pierre Laporte. They also kidnapped British Trade Commissioner James Cross. And this really scared Canadians because, remember, this was a time of the Red Scare. It was during the Cold War, and the FLQ was a socialist organization. And so when the FLQ raised the stakes and kidnapped two government officials, people became very scared that they actually were a threat to the government and that they might work to overthrow the government in a way similar to Vietnam or Cuba. So what happened? Well, first of all, the Canadian military was called to the streets of Montreal on the 12th of October, and then on the 16th of October, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau invoked the War Measures Act. And the War Measures Act, if you didn't know, was essentially an act that put Canada in emergency mode. And what's significant about this is it had only been used during the two world wars before. So this was the first peacetime the War Measures Act was ever used. And what did it mean for the average Canadian? Habeas corpus and all the rest went out the window. And if that isn't crazy enough, the next day, the 17th of October, the FLQ announced that they had killed the Labour Minister. And the Labour Minister's body was found strangled in a car just outside of a Montreal area airport. So this kicks off a series of raids and arrests and all sorts of other things by the police and the military in Quebec. And this goes on all through the end of October and all through November, and 400 plus people were arrested, including some of the kidnappers. And then, on the 3rd of December, the police finally find the remaining kidnappers. However, they cannot just go in and arrest them because there's still the matter of the commissioner, and they don't want him to get killed as well. So you know what they do? They make an agreement to allow these kidnappers safe passage to Cuba, and they even fly them there on a Canadian military plane. Oh, and here's my favorite part. Guess who actually approved this on Cuba's end? Fidel Castro himself. Anyway, I'm gonna go off and do stuff. Bye!